Welcome back to another episode of The Football Chemist, where we use data to go through football's biggest talking points without boring or confusing you with all that technical jargon. Today, we will be exploring why Chelsea want to sign Brighton forward Georginio Rutter. The Frenchman has been linked with a move to London, but where exactly will he fit into Enzo Maresca's squad? Does this signing make any sense, or are Chelsea better off investing their money in a different position? Let's get into it. So first things first, who is Georginio Rutter? Georginio Rutter is a 22-year-old attacking midfielder who plays for Brighton. He came through the youth system at Rennes, who have got a recent history of producing top players, before moving to Hoffenheim as an 18-year-old. At Hoffenheim, he slowly established himself as a starting player within the 3 years he spent there and began to really add some goals to his game. Then in 2023, he joined Leeds United for a club record fee of £35.5 million. However, his progress was hampered a little by Leeds' relegation, but last season he was the second highest assister in the Championship. This earned him a move back to the Premier League with Brighton, who in turn signed him for a club record £40 million. He began to settle in well under Fabian Hürzeler, but unfortunately a foot injury in March curtailed his season. So that's who he is, but what makes him so special that two clubs have broken their transfer record to sign him, and why do Chelsea also want to add him to their roster? So as I mentioned before, he is a very flexible attacker who can play as an attacking midfielder, who can play as a striker, and he can even play on the wing. This is helped by the fact that he is very adept at using both feet. In terms of what he excels at, he is really strong off the ball, and this is shown when we look at some of his top statistics. As we can see here, he's in the top 10% for attacking midfielders in some of the more defensive stats, be it your tackles, your aerials wons, your shots blocked. But at the same time, he does excel at certain attacking statistics. The one that caught my mind here was the through balls. To be in the 92nd percentile here does show that he's very good at getting his strikers in and in on goal. And this is something that Nicholas Jackson is also very good at latching onto. So maybe we can see these two linking up quite nicely here. And his off-the-ball work is further evidence when we take a look at his polygon. We can see that he is lacking some of the more traditional strengths that you'd expect from an attacking midfielder, but he's really off the charts when it comes to interceptions, blocks, and tackles won. However, there's some numbers here that he would need to work on if he does want to establish himself as a top player. Because when we look at this polygon, combined by looking at some of his worst statistics, we can see how he can have a tendency to go missing in matches. He's right at the bottom in Europe's top 5 leagues for things like passes attempted, touches, carries. And so we can see that if this all comes together and Chelsea are in a big match where they're dominating the ball, we can see that Rutter could have the tendency to go missing a bit. To be so low in these statistics when he plays for a club like Brighton, who are known for their progressive play, and they're hardly a lower table team as well, they're up there in the top half of the Premier League, this is quite worrying. And as we had a quick look at before, his game has shifted from more being goals-based to assist-based. And this is evident when we look at this graphic again, where you can see the blue area here showing the assists really on the rise as he came to Leeds, whereas the goals went down a bit. However, we can see the two evening out a bit more in his half season with Brighton so far. Obviously, it is quite early to draw any meaningful conclusions from the season at Brighton, but we can start to see a few patterns emerging. So how can he translate this style of play into Enzo Maresca's side at Chelsea? So as mentioned before, it's a bit unclear on how he'll come into Chelsea's starting 11 because he's a very flexible player who's got the ability to play across the front four in any of those 4 positions. However, given that Chelsea currently have Cole Palmer, and I don't see Rutter being an out-and-out number 9, it seems most likely that he'll be playing on one of the wings. That means that he'll either be slotting in instead of Noni Madueke on the right or Pedro Neto on the left. And we'll compare him with these two players later and what he does better or worse than them. However, this ambiguity here is our first sign that maybe Rutter isn't the right signing for Chelsea, because right now Chelsea are struggling with real identity, real set positions, and maybe they do just need an out-and-out winger instead of a more fluid player, a more versatile player like Rutter. Because the thing that has really held Chelsea back so far this season has been their attacking statistics, and it is why they are not more comfortably in the Champions League spot and have got themselves in a position where with 6 matches to go, it's looking quite touch and go whether they will actually qualify. Because when we look at their shooting compared to the other top goal scoring sides in the Premier League this season, they are only 6th for the goals they've scored. However, on the other hand, they're 2nd for non-penalty XG, which shows that they are not scoring as many goals as you'd expect them to. And whilst this could be down to bad luck, this could also be down to bad finishing from their attackers. Now, just in case why you're wondering, I picked these 6 teams. These are the top 6 teams for goals scored in the league this season. Yes, it's a bit weird to see Tottenham in this list, given that they're currently fighting to not finish 17th. But in terms of their attacking output this season, they've actually been quite good. However, just taking a closer look at Chelsea's statistics here, we can see that they're barely in the top half of Premier League teams for goals per shot on target and average shot distance, which I'll come on to a bit more later. Because when we look at their goals minus expected goals across their attackers this season, we can see that most of their players are actually in the negative in this statistic. It's only Jadon Sancho, surprisingly, and Pedro Neto who are in the positive. And with Sancho, he's become an ever unpopular player in Chelsea's system, so I doubt we'll see him back in their team next season. If Rutter were to come in, as we can see here, he does have a positive non-penalty goals minus expected goals, showing that he scores more than he's expected to. And so this could help solve Chelsea's problems to an extent. However, Rutter's contribution here pales in comparison to some of the league's best, because when we look at the top 3 players in this metric, we can see that they absolutely dwarf those positive Chelsea players. Let's ignore Chris Wood for now because he is quite old and Chelsea will not be signing him and definitely not be signing him as a winger. But if we look at the other 2 players up here, Matheus Cunha and Bryan Mbuemo, these are 2 players who could potentially play on the wing for Chelsea and could be a more suitable signing. So this begs the question, why are they looking for a player like Rutter when they could be looking for a more out-and-out winger, someone who's proven to score goals like Cunha or Mbuemo? Because the other problem that Chelsea really have with their attacking is their goal-creating actions compared to their shot-creating actions. They're 2nd in the league for their shot-creating actions, but this falls to 6th for goal-creating actions per 90. And the reason why this is the case could be down to 2 reasons. The first is that their strikers and attackers aren't clinical enough, which is a fair point because Nicholas Jackson is 3rd in the league for big chances missed and doesn't even have the goals that some of his rivals in this statistic have. But the second reason, which I think is more pressing, is that they are not taking shots in the best position. And that's evident when we come back to this graphic here and we look at their goals per shot on target, which is 12th in the league, which shows quite simply that they're not scoring their shots enough because, as you can see here, the other teams are in the top 4, okay, barring City, who are also a bit of an anomaly here. But this could be down to their strikers being wasteful, but it could also be down to them not taking shots in good enough positions, which is backed up by the fact that they're quite low down in their average shot distance, where they're the 10th furthest out. So their shot quality is quite low, even though they're taking a lot of shots. So this then comes back around to suggest that the players aren't creating good goal-creating actions because not every goal-creating action is equal. And when we look at Chelsea's forwards' goal-creating actions per 90, this is more evident. Again, surprisingly, Jadon Sancho is the one who's leading it, but again, it's quite a small sample size. And 2nd in the list is Enzo Fernandez, who is very good at creating chances, but at the end of the day, Chelsea don't want to be reliant on him doing this because he plays further back. Should Rutter join, he would be an upgrade on Neto, as we can see here, but just a slight one, and he's still lagging behind players like Madueke and Palmer in this metric. So how does he compare with Mbuemo and Cunha, who I mentioned earlier? Well, again, he's lagging behind. Mbuemo and Cunha would produce much better numbers in this metric, as we can see here, and be challenging some of Chelsea's best players should they join next season. So again, it looks like Rutter's flexibility is working against him, where it's kind of that jack of all trades, master of none, where Chelsea might be looking for a more specialised winger, such as Mbuemo or Cunha, who could provide a bit more damage, a bit more cutting edge, whilst not perhaps having that versatility that Rutter has. So where does this leave Chelsea? Because it does look like Rutter is just simply not the right player for their system. Given how they struggle in front of goal this season, and the fact that Enzo Maresca has come under a bit of flack recently for not being creative enough. Surely they're better off signing a more creative forward, and the two that I've highlighted so far in the Premier League, Mbuemo and Cunha, are both young and are both on the market come this summer. And whilst one of the main arguments might be that Rutter might be the cheaper option, this doesn't really stand up because Mbuemo's value is around £50 million, whereas Cunha's value is around £62 million. Rutter, on the other hand, cost Brighton £40 million and has grown into their squad, and so Brighton will not be selling him for any less than £40 million. He'll definitely be closer to the £50-60 million mark should Chelsea want to sign him. And when you combine this with the fact that Chelsea will be struggling to keep within PSR rules given their heavy spending recently and the fact that they spread that spending out over 5-6 years, it means that they cannot afford to splash the cash this summer. And so rather than signing a versatile player like Rutter, who can kind of solve a lot of problems, they need to sign more specific players geared for specific positions. And so they don't really have the money to be, I don't want to say wasting, because I don't think Rutter is a bad player, but he's not really fixing any issues straight away. He's slightly patching up a few small issues, but not actually fixing issues. So if Chelsea do want to get back to winning ways, they need to spend smartly. They need to sign attacking players who can create chances, but the other area they need to strengthen is in defence, and also, if they want to start scoring goals, they'll need to replace Nicholas Jackson. Neither option will be cheap, and they do not have the money just to have this scattergun approach to signings that they have in the past. Rutter clearly is a good player. 2 clubs have made him their record signing, and he is doing very well for Brighton thanks to his versatility, but this just isn't what Chelsea need right now. Therefore, I'm really struggling to get my head around why Chelsea want to sign Georginio Rutter. They're far better off looking for someone like Mbuemo or someone like Cunha. But what do you think? Can you see why Chelsea want to get a player like Rutter? Would you like to see him in Chelsea's team? Let me know what you think in the comments below and give this video a like if you like what you've seen. Also, feel free to subscribe to this channel if you want to see more content like this, and for more behind the scenes stuff and short form content, give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok. I'll see you next time.